Howdy. Another day, another Saryn video. Here we are. Saryn post Jade Shadows, specifically in relation to the Blast status effect. That is what we are here to talk about today. Because Saryn, she did not need a buff, and now she got a buff via Blast getting a buff, and it's kind of insane. And you'll see here why that's the case. So first, you know what, here, we'll show off the Saryn fashion in case you're interested. If you like my videos, leave a like and subscribe. Subscribing means the world. It helps much more than you'll ever know. So that would be awesome if you did that. Now, the reason Blast is so good with Saryn is Toxic Lash. Now, I'm sure most people know how Toxic Lash works, but if you didn't, Toxic Lash applies a second hit when you deal damage with your weapon. It is completely separate from your weapon, and it does damage based off of the damage dealt by your weapon. The base extra damage is 30%, so if my weapon, post mods, deals 100,000 damage, then the secondary effect, the secondary hit from Toxic Lash will then deal 30,000 damage. And it has a guaranteed toxic status proc. So it will always, apply toxin to them. Now, other than dots already double dipping from faction multipliers such as roar or faction mods, Toxic Lash's effect that it deals damage from the direct damage double dips from faction multipliers, and the damage over time toxin that it applies triple dips from faction multipliers. That's always been the case, that's nothing new. Now, the reason it's good is because it applies that extra hit to any source of damage dealt by your weapon. And that is the reason that is typically used in conjunction with Kuva Sobek, or sorry, Sobek in general. Actually, normal Sobek's even better than Kuva Sobek, but we're not going to go into that here. Now, the reason people use it with this is because Acid Shells. Acid Shells doesn't do enough damage to outright kill an enemy, but having an extra hit that then does even more damage can really help you do a bunch of damage, right? So if I were to, say, kill these enemies, and I've got Acid Shells on right now, it's not going to do a ton of damage, especially because they have armor right now. Here, I'm going to add in Corrosive so I can kill this guy faster than, like, in 10 years. See, it didn't really do a whole lot to them. But if I add in Acid Shells, now it's going to apply that Toxin. And you can see it's already doing significantly more, plus the status effect is doing a bunch of damage. And then you can, raise this up significantly. What people do is like they add in armor strip and roar and stuff, but we're not here to talk about that. I just wanted to show off why people like Toxic Lash and why it's so good, specifically with Kuva Sobek. Now, there are other things that apply AoEs that typically don't have a large amount of base damage. They need the extra damage, such as, the Tenet Detrin, or Normal Detrin, or Mara Detrin with their magnetic shells. It's very similar to Acid Shells, except it has a smaller radius. Now, the reason it's good with blast damage is because of the blast changes. So we're going to go back to the Tenet Galaxion, because this is a good weapon to show it on. Blast damage, as it now states, Blast deals 30% of base damage after 1.5 seconds as an explosion. At 10 stacks or on death, stacks deal their damage simultaneously to enemies within 5 meters while staggering them. So basically, after you hit an enemy with a Blast status proc, however much damage you dealt, so it's going to be affected by crits or anything like that, it will then deal 30% of the base damage from that. So I don't believe it's going to be increased by increasing your elemental damage, but it will by crit damage and crit chance and base damage. It will then explode in like a 1.5 meter radius roughly after 1.5 seconds, kind of like a DOT. So I can show you that real quick by spawning these guys. So it's not insane, but it is kind of nice, right? So look at that, 5 procs, and then they all rapidly explode, right? They have to delay and then they explode just like a damage over time. However, if you cap out the stacks, right? So if I get to 10 stacks, they're all going to explode instantly as soon as they hit 10 stacks. And instead of doing, so they'll do all the damage, which would be 300%, right? If all of your hits were doing the same amount of damage at least. It will then take the 10 instances of 30% of the damage dealt when applying that proc, and all the damage will explode immediately when you hit 10 stacks. and instead of being in a small explosion, it will do it in a 5-meter radius explosion, giving it much more AoE. And it will also do the same thing when an enemy dies. So if an enemy dies with 7 procs, it'll do it in like a 5-meter radius AoE, and then do all 7 procs worth of damage immediately. So the more blast you apply, the more explosions you're going to get, which is nice because it doesn't cap out, it just resets after hitting 10 because they all explode. That is a separate hit of damage. The explosion, whether it has the delay and explodes, or you hit the cap or they die, is a separate explosion. That means it can proc Toxic Lash. So if I hit this guy, although it's hard to tell here because I'm chaining. Here, I'm actually going to have to switch weapons to weapon. That does not chain because, well, I mean, you know, it's chaining, so of course it's applying more blast. So we're going to go with the Flux Rifle if I can find that anywhere in here. Here it is. Here's what we have on it. If you don't know, it does not chain, so it'll be obvious that it's working. So we cast Toxic Lash, hit this guy till he explodes. Look at that. It applied the hit from the blast. That is very, very strong. That means all of your blast explosions are now applying all of the damage from Toxic Lash, giving you even more AoE damage. That is insane. Now, that's not the only thing that makes it incredibly strong with Saryn. The other thing that makes it strong would be, let's say we go back in here. Tenet Flux Rifle. Here is the Tenet Flux Rifle build. We're going to switch to this. Okay, here's the build. Alright, we're going to have nothing on it other than the Arcane, which isn't proccing. So if we cast Toxic Lash and we come over to an enemy and start shooting him in the body, and we just keep shooting until our Toxin procs stop going up because of the timer not being able to go higher. Oh, we ran out of ammo first. Okay, we hit like 110 Toxin procs, which is pretty good. However, if we add blast damage into the mix, I'm sure some people are already well aware of where I'm going with this, because blast is a separate instance of damage. Every blast explosion will also apply the toxin damage. So now as I shoot this guy and it keeps applying blast, you can see that we went over 110. We were at like 130, 140 there. Now, because I'm not applying a ton of blast, it didn't do as much as I would like. So if you want to raise that, you need to go higher status chance. So let's say we add in this, and then we add in the status chance dual mods, right? So we get more blast and we have much higher status. And then we can also add in the augments, and this will not affect our toxin procs other than because of the blast, like, you know, synergy, since the separate hit for Toxic Lash is its own hit that has a guaranteed proc regardless. So now, theoretically, our blast procs should be much higher. So let's go over to this guy, start draining him into the body, all of our hits. Look at that. Do you see how fast that's going up? Well over 250 now. I ran out of ammo right before I hit 300 toxin procs. Nearly tripled the amount of toxin procs. So we can get a lot of damage by building blast with Saryn and Toxic Lash. It's kind of insane. So let's go back to Tenet Glaxion. Something that makes Tenet Glaxion especially good, and this could actually work with something like the Amprex as well, is that if the enemy is grouped up, all of the blast hits. Wait, I'm not on a blast build on my Glaxion. I have to switch, don't I? Yes, we gotta switch to this. There we go. This is the build we have on. So all of the explosions from Tenet Glaxion on the direct hit target will also apply toxin, but then all of the chain beam explosion, all the chain beaming to hit other enemies to get blast to cause an explosion to then hit the main target is also applying toxin. So you can build up, look at how fast we're building up our toxin procs. 500, 600, 700, and he's dead. That is Phantasma level of status effects. And also because of how the armor changes, armor strip isn't even as necessary as it was before to kill these enemies. Though Saryn obviously already still has armor strip. Now let's say we go back into here and we switch to an actual build that is made for weapons platform on Saryn. This is what we got going on. We'll have Corrosive from Venom Dose. Toxic Lash is obviously doing its thing. Roar, because, well, it double dips on, or it gives us bonus damage, it double dips on statuses, and it triple dips on the status from Toxic Lash. So that's very much a thing we want here. And then again, this is the build we have here. Now, full disclosure, I do have 2 green shards for Corrosive max stacks, so this is nowhere near as necessary as it was before Jade Chow's. This, you don't even need this, okay? Total overkill. And so is this. I have 2 Tau Forge for Toxin DOT damage. Complete overkill. Like, this is so much overkill. You do not need that at all. And you're going to see that it's just going to completely destroy these enemies. Cast that, cast this. And now we go in. We don't even have our stacks built up yet on our Glaxion either, by the way. You see that? This is kind of insane. And you can do that on any weapon that's decent for blast. If you have a weapon that's like got any sort of chaining and high stats effects, you can do that. It's like Kuva Sobek. Or sorry, it's like Acid Shell Sobek, but not having to be on the Sobek. Look at that. Holy hell. That is insane. And I'm not even like armor stripping them beforehand with my spores. Like, I'm Saryn, I can also cast my spores. That would also be very, very viable. So now we're going to do this, and I'm only going to use Toxic Lash now that we have our stacks built up. I don't even think I have Deadhead built up. I have Deadhead equipped, but I can't even build it up because they just die so quick. And they can die to the Toxin procs. It's just, I can't even get Deadhead to proc. Look at that. And the Toxin DOTs are dealing some fairly decent damage, I'd say. Like, look at that, 127 Toxin procs. No armor strip was on that guy. No viral damage was on that guy. Just good old Toxic Lash, and of course I do have those Tau Forge, but I think you get the point. Blast damage is really freaking strong with Saryn. So Saryn went from already absurdly strong, and to be totally honest, it would be very reasonable for them to nerf her. I think she needs a nerf, but now she's even better because of the blast changes. She just got even stronger. So I guess, you know, that's kind of funny. But that's gonna be it for this Saryn and blast damage video. So yeah, big whoa, like and subscribe, maybe. Adios.